The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the hosts and guests, and not necessarily those of the staff or management of Worldwide Digital Broadcasting Corporation.
Rise! Get yourselves together! Rise! Stand up and live your life! Rise! Get yourselves together! Rise! Hands up high!
I was just like, fuck the world. Like, not like I need a break, like honestly, like fuck all of you, like everybody and everything, and I don't like doing anything anymore. Like nothing makes me happy. I don't like anyone. I even told one of my therapists at one point, I said, I just don't want to feel anything. None of us are immune from, you know, just shit happening to you, you know, and not to you, but just kind of making poor choices or being human. There's always that element. And for me, life got really weird and really hard all at one time. There was a few times over the last couple of years where I was just like kind of like ready to throw in the towel and just kind of give up on everything. But I found that for me, most of my suffering is self-inflicted. It's not like it's coming from some external source that's making me feel that way. No one can make you feel anything. It's what you think about and you're internally that makes you feel things. Like you are the only person that makes you feel anything. And so I know that I have this pattern of getting into these kinds of thoughts and these kinds of actions and choices. I've always had these kind of depressive side, and I think that's something some people may not have gone down the road of, like injecting and like living on the streets and like, you know, that kind of stuff. And so they think like, oh, my story's not that bad. Right. It's like, dude, no, man. Like, if you're here, it's as bad as if you're here, it's that bad. There's nothing special about that guy who's been living on the streets and the person who's just like binge drinker 3 times a month. Your life's fucked up, and you realize that there's something you got to do about it, and it's just as hard on either end. But each one is just as relevant as the next. And you don't have to know somebody to have an intimate experience with them, and it also you don't have to like know someone to feel safe enough to talk to them. Any group of people can get together and just be like, hey, we're gonna get real in here, like let's get real, and just be vulnerable, say whatever's going on, and like be accepted, walk out of the room and feel great.
Welcome to the Rise Above Show. I am Joe Perroni.
And I'm Heidi Mancini.
Tell everybody about our sponsors.
Our sponsor is Jay Jung from City Athletic Club over on Sahara in Summerlin. So if you're looking for a gym to join, they're the place to go. We want to take a moment to thank Marie. It was she's Las Vegas Best MealPrep.com, originally called MealPrepVegas.com. So her number is 702-624-9286. So if you're looking for food prep meals to make your life easier in general, or if you're trying to lose weight or you're a competitor, she will customize your meal plan to your needs and your cost, of course. And if you go on the website, she has all the different meal plans that she offers and estimates of pricing. So those are our partners in our show.
And you better hurry up too, because Marie is getting so busy.
She's getting busy, yeah.
She's getting a lot of clients.
She's getting a lot of clients from us advertising for her on the Rise Above Show on Twitter and Facebook, Instagram, and also Twitter. So if you're looking to partner with the Rise Above Show, we're always looking for ways to help you build your business, push your product or service, so we can help you get more clients or customers, and you can also help us keep a good quality show going every week at the WWDBTV.com. That's where we're out of live. And then, of course, all the shows are archived at WWDBTV.com. We're also on YouTube under Rise Above, Joe and Heidi. You have to type in Joe and Heidi because there's a lot of headings with Rise Above. And also on josephperroni.com, that's Joe's website, where we also archive the shows, and we give a little blog every week about the show from the previous week. So you can also get your information there. You can get information about Joe's business as a personal trainer. He's also a marriage and family counselor. He has things on that website regarding that and our life. You know, we have life pictures of what goes on in our life. And then, of course, on Facebook, we have a Rise Above show. We have a Rise Above page on Facebook. So if you'd like to go there and like our page and check us out, you can always private message me. I handle all the social media part of the show. So if you're wanting to partner up with us for advertising and helping in the community, we would be more than willing, we'd love to help you out, and you would help us out too. So we want to thank anybody that would join our partnership. Also, I want to announce that on Sunday, August 27th at 2 p.m. here, 2 to 4 p.m. here at the Lumosity Center, I'll be holding my first with Sarah Magnus. She's going to help me with this workshop and clinic. The Self-Esteem Butterfly Effect is the name of the. My phone's going off. Anyway, that's the name of the program is called Self-Esteem, the Butterfly Effect. And we're going to talk about your relationships with food, your body, and life itself, and get some ideas and get some guest speakers in on our workshop. So hopefully it's a good event. So hopefully we see you here. It's $20 if you get the ticket pre-workshop, $25 at the door.
Women only?
Women are coming, but from what I understand, there's a couple men that are interested to come on Sunday, and they're more than welcome to attend our workshop. And again, in the future, we will be doing self-esteem workshops for the men out there, because they have issues too that are separate from women that we need to help them grow from, and help the young men that are coming up develop a strong sense of self-esteem and being a man. Joe will probably be working more, you'll be working more on that end of it with the gentleman, but that is in the future. And of course, anybody's welcome to these workshops, because you might have a sister, a mother, a girlfriend, somebody, a wife that you're involved with, and some of the things that we talk about, men can get like a different perspective on what they see, what they observe, and they can maybe make a better understanding of maybe what they're seeing and going through. And it might help the relationship, or they might be able to tell their wife or girlfriend about it. Hey, I saw this great workshop. Why don't you attend and see what the girls are doing? And it's all ages. We want teenagers. All women of all ages are welcome to come. And if you have a special talent, skill, legitimate, you're welcome to come in and share that, because we want to teach life skills to the women and these girls that they're not getting. The young girls are not getting that anymore in school. Home economics and hygiene and presentation, how you poise yourself. These are things that, a young woman, it is part of grooming, and it is part of our, upbringing too, and that is part of self-esteem when you have some skill set. And
yep.
So anyway, that's it. That's all I got to say. Which is a lot. Sorry.
All right, so we're going to start off the show. In the very beginning, we had a video that I played of Chester Bennington. If you didn't know who he was, honestly, I'm not really a fan of the music, but that has nothing to do with what we're doing today. But I felt that what he said was very important, because there's a lot we can pull from what he said. If you don't know, that was the last interview he did. He committed suicide after that video, and he hung himself is what he did. And one of the reasons, this is a very difficult show, because we're dealing with suicide, we're dealing with depression, and I know people have a lot of strong opinions, and we're all entitled to them. But I also feel we need to do a show on this, because social media is almost totally hijacking mental health. It's totally changing it. It's redefining what mental illness really is. And I see this over and over again. Most people don't actually know what depression is. There are plenty of things I see on Facebook about people glorifying suicide. Like Chester Bennington, he was this lost angel that just needed to go home. Let's not glorify it. He was a very sick, disturbed man that went through a lot of abuse as a child, and he never worked through his problems, and unfortunately he committed suicide. That's what it is. He's not some angel that felt like he needed to go home. I see a lot of people out there, they're cutting themselves, and they think it's somehow this ritualistic fun thing. There's things called pro-ana, in other words, people who are pro-anorexia, where it's this inspirational thing to be as skinny as you can. there's nothing inspirational about anorexia. That's something else that has an incredibly high mortality rate. So we're playing with things now that can kill you. And for some reason in our society, we think it's almost a good thing. There was a show on TV, was it Netflix, a few months ago called 13 Reasons. It was so popular. And it made suicide a viable alternative to teenagers who wanted to get attention. Right? And
it's
I
attention
just don't
seeking.
see
And one
this.
thing I want to say about that, when you mentioned social media before, with everybody going on social media, it's another attention seeking way of getting attention because, you know, I was thinking about this earlier today when I was thinking about doing the show that, you know, when I was younger and I was a teenager going through stuff, I think every single one of us have gone through some crisis in our life. I think every single one of us have experimented with some type of drug or alcohol, something in our lifetimes that we thought this would make us feel good or it'd take us temporarily out of the situation that we're in. But back then, which was back then, we didn't have social media that we could go on there and we could seek out and act out our days and our moods. And I don't feel good today, and I don't look good today, and I think I'm going to cut myself today. You know, a lot of things that we did, if you were doing anything, you were doing it in private, and a lot of times you worked through these situations in private. You know, we read a little bit. There wasn't Google then, so you would read a little bit, and I personally feel that with everything getting so sophisticated today that it's a way of, you know, you can Google what the symptoms of depression are, and you can go to a doctor now and say, I have all these symptoms, and the doctor goes, fine, here's some Zoloft, see you in 2 months. The thing with the social media and acting things out, and I saw his interview, and I have nothing to say about it other than I think he's a pathetic human being to go on and on and on and on about all his shit. The other thing is he's talking to a counselor, which another thing that we didn't have years ago was if you went to a counselor, it was a shameful thing. You didn't tell everybody, I have to go to a counselor, because if you did, you were considered sick in the head. You're mentally unstable. Well, you know, the reality is that if you're going to a counselor, you are mentally unstable, but back then there was a stigma attached to it. And I also think that with more and more people going to counseling and they're getting more of the language, and they almost keep talking about it and like you say, idealizing it, and it's a perpetual loop of this is what I'm going through. And I've been to counseling, and I love sitting with a counselor. I think they can help you they don't give you answers if they're good when they don't tell you what to do. They kind of make you sort through that yourself. But I also know that they ask the same questions over and over again. It's like a repeat whenever you go in there. And it's like, why are we going over this over and over and over and over again? At some point, you have to move forward. And it's the same thing with these people with their social media rants and everything else. Okay, if it's really that bad, then, you know, go get the help that you need. But the whole world doesn't need to know what's going on. And the thing with these celebrities is, you know, we hear about it because we know them. But honestly, right now, while we're speaking, somebody's cutting themselves or hanging themselves that is not a celebrity, that obviously has mental health issues, and we don't hear about it. So the media, once again, they are the ones that, you know, we glorify it. The guy's got like 50 videos on YouTube before he died, during he died, his songs, you listen to his lyrics. You know, people on the media are the ones that are glorifying the suicide, because honestly, this is going to sound pretty naive on my part. I know who Linkin Park is. I didn't know who he was. And when people were talking about this guy that killed himself, I didn't really care, and I didn't even give it another, I was like, we have another casualty, and, you know, whatever. That would probably sound to some people like I'm unempathetic and I'm not caring, but I think that I am. I'm very caring. Anybody that knows me would say that I am, but I also get there's a lot of enabling and a lot of crutches and a lot of people not really doing a lot, from the medical all the way down to the actual person that has the mental issues that they have, because they have to do the work. And that's the reality of mental illness and these things. You can sit in front of a counselor all day long, and you can sit in front of your spouse, or I can, you know, talk to you all day about a feeling that I have. The reality is until you change the feeling and you go, okay, right now I'm not feeling very well because I'm not making the money I want to make. Okay, let's set a plan in action. How can I make more money? I know maybe I can work more hours, or maybe I can start, you know, getting the clientele I already have as clients and build off of them. Use the clients I already have to open up my network. If I'm working a dead-end job where I'm only making a minimum wage, instead of boohooing about, I can't feed my kids, I can't do this, I can't do that, put yourself through college. Do something to help better yourself. At least if you do something and it doesn't end up well in the end, at least you put effort forward.
Right. Listen, I agree with a lot of what you say, but I'm a little bit different than you, though. I would take it from the standpoint of, let's say I don't know how to fix my car, so I look for help. And if society is making it to where there's so many myths about it that I just don't know really where to go for really true help. I don't know. So I'm going to take it that way with mental illness or any psychological discomfort. There's a lot of people out there who do seek help. The problem is that social media is so rampant with people doing the wrong thing. And psychology overall is a screwed up business because they make most of their money off of giving you drugs. So we're not really handling the symptoms. I mean, we're handling symptoms, but we're not really handling the cause. And so we have this circular loop of just incompetence all the way through. So although I do see a lot of negative, like you said, and it does get me kind of, let's say, frustrated, I also feel that there needs to be a good, strong, powerful, honest voice in the wilderness. And that one's going to be mine. Because I need to say the truth about where this stuff happens. Like right now, as it is, if you had a lot of trauma in your life and you feel alone, it's going to feel very comfortable for you to be on social media or find friends where you could have like this misery loves company thing. Unfortunately, when you're in around a group of other people like yourself that don't know where you're going and there's no leader, you're going to end up where you are. You might feel a little better, but you're not going to do any better. And that's where the problem lies. I have a study here that says 40% of people 21 and under, they admit to faking a mental illness. What does that tell us? That it's so in. You could go on the internet right now and find shirts that say, I'm cute, but I'm also bipolar, there's a lot of shirts glorifying all of these mental disorders. And it's almost like it's the in thing. People are happy about it and they just kind of fall into it. This Chester Bennington, I'm not going to make light of it in any way, shape, or form. He's a human being, just like me. I don't know him from anybody, but he's human. So I feel bad that someone would think that they need to end their life to make their pain go away. It's horrible. But what's also horrible is to watch the thousands upon thousands of people commenting about him, saying that you did so much for me. You're such an inspiration to me. You're a great guy. You really brought out this. I feel the same way. And I'm like, well, you're all sitting in this pit of pain, but no one's looking outside of it trying to get better, and no one's seeing it. The first thing that they talk about is how depression leads to suicide. And suicide is the #1 cause of suicide. But let's get to it. Let's be honest right off the top. Depression is a symptom. It's not a problem. Depression doesn't just throw itself on you. It is a very long cascading of negative events without you taking charge to do something positive to change it. Depression is actually not a bad thing in the hands of a competent human being. Depression is a normal response to the world. Okay, it's not a level of health to be totally adjusted to a sick world. Okay, we all, if you have intelligence and you have empathy and compassion and caring, you will always have a low level of depression. John and I could have this conversation about going to the Who concert the other night and watching how an end of an era where musically talented human beings are getting pushed out only because of their age. And it's, as much as it was exhilarating and one of the best nights of my life to hang out with some good friends and watch a concert, at the end when I was driving home I realized it is true. It's the end of an era. and there's a sadness that goes along with it. And it's the same thing even when I'm with Heidi. I can have a great night and be like, this is really awesome. But I also know that every day gets one day closer to the day of my expiration date, and I'll die. Like, that's just basic being alive. If you are human, you're going to feel depressed at certain times, right? Sometimes it's just being sad. But you'll always have that if you're a human being and you're an intelligent human being. Do you want to throw in on that?
One thing, yeah, and like I said, I guess I get sad sometimes about different things, but I try not to stay on that feeling very long, just because when I get depressed, I get very down, and then I start, not liking who I am. So I've learned to, I'll say, okay, I'm not feeling good about this right now, but what are the good things that are going on right now? I know I'm still here. I'm still productive. I'm still pretty healthy. I try to put my mind, because if I think about dying long enough, it scares the hell out of me that, I'm 52 and I'm getting closer to, there than, I was when I was younger. But I try not to sit on that thought, because it scares me. It gives me panic attacks and things like that. So I just go, we'll be thankful. What are you doing right now? One of the things I want to touch on that you didn't bring up was the family of him, the wife and the kids. Now, his kids are small, so they're probably not feeling it right away. But, to me, I go, wow, there's all this glorification of how this guy hung himself. They, go over and over on YouTube about this, but there's only one mention from it's a 3-minute video from his wife that really doesn't talk about much other than finding him. But there's no conversation going on about how's the family dealing with this. Everybody's more concerned about the fans. Like, I'm so concerned about, I'm hurting. You hear people in the salon and this and that. Oh my God, I'm so devastated. Are you shitting me? Like, you didn't even know this guy for real. You only knew him like on TV, and but nobody's saying, I wonder how his wife feels, and I wonder how the 2 children that you have, how they're going to feel being raised without their biological father, or what they have to live with the stigma that, either they're going to keep it a secret from the children because there's a stigma attached to suicide. The mother's maybe going to tell them the truth, or maybe not. Then that's the other thing we do. We fluff it over and we go, well, your dad he died. He wasn't happy. Because you hear that a lot too. Nobody really wants to talk about, yeah, he killed himself. So... Yeah. What were you going to say, John? John's getting my attention.
This is important. So, if we're talking about depression,
right?
And you made a comment, if I understood it or heard it properly, that it is part of the human condition.
It is, yes.
And is not. I mean, my theory is, I could be full of crap, but the intent of that is to be a motivating factor.
Oh man, look at you! You fell right into my trap.
Oh well,
yeah.
Screw you then.
No.
That's depressing as shit.
Well, it kind of falls on what I just said about how I get a feeling.
Right.
But if I sit in that feeling too long, I can get panic and anxiety. But what it does is it makes me grateful for what's going on, but it can also act as a catalyst to get your ass going.
Absolutely.
Right. I need to do something about this. I need to change this situation.
Here's the thing about the universe, okay? The universe is the most amazing thing in the world. Let me start it with this. If you're hearing me and watching me right now, you are a biological marvel. It's absolutely an amazing thing that you're actually alive. You have only a 1 in 440 trillion chance to be born. And you were born. And you're here. I'm here. You're watching me.
Explain
that alone.
Explain that. For people who don't understand what you're saying, what are you saying? That 1 in 400 trillion.
Well, because biologically, just the fact that it's, first of all, it's somewhat difficult for a girl to get pregnant. If you were that one sperm, is what, okay.
Yeah.
So just because of that, just by the fact that you're born, if you're in that weird position right now and you're in a dark place, because listen, I know about dark places. Heidi knows. Listen, you are a winner. Just for the fact of your being born, you beat like 400 trillion other people to get here. That's the celebration right there. Yeah, so that's amazing. The universe is an incredibly amazing place. And let me tell you what the universe does. it has installed in us chemicals and all these features that allow us to adapt to our environment. One of them is depression. Depression is an amazingly good thing because there's something that needs your attention and you choose not to pay attention to it. So your body says, you know what, I'm going to shut you down. You will start to lose this good feeling about doing other things in your life because you need to pay attention to this thing. That's initially what we call anxiety, right? Like if it's April, when are taxes? April 15th? If it's April 1st and I haven't paid my taxes yet, I have some anxiety. It's April 5th, my anxiety comes up more. April 15th, I haven't paid, my anxiety is through the roof. And whose fault is it? Mine, because if I didn't pay my taxes. It's not time to go to the doctor to get a pill to make the anxiety go away. It's my time to go to the bank and pay the IRS. That's my job. You understand what I'm saying? If you're a doctor and you know someone has a broken ankle and you don't fix the broken ankle, but you give them medication so they don't feel the broken ankle, that's malpractice. It's the same thing here. You're doing malpractice on yourself because you're not following what your body is trying to tell you. If you have anxiety, it's that alarm going, take care of business. Take care of business. If you refuse, and it's like April 20th now you're in trouble, and then you go, I still don't have the money and I didn't pay the IRS and now I have to pay penalties, depression can set in. And then you go, I have a depression problem. No, you don't. You have a lack of doing your responsibilities problem that you should handle in the first place. But the only way to handle it is to not hang around a bunch of other tax cheats. Your job is to pay your taxes, if you understand what I'm saying.
Well, and here's the other thing, too, I want to touch on. Not to interrupt you, the depression part, when you said it, I was just thinking about that. When you're sad, like when somebody dies, the other part is I don't want to minimize that. And the feeling of sadness is different than depression.
Right.
So people use that, too. They'll say, well, somebody died, so I'm depressed. You're sad. And that's a normal feeling for when somebody passes away, dies. You're sad. Now, the depressed state comes when you continue to, that's, you know what I'm saying? You don't move on with your life. You basically continue to use the death or the event as a means to, I'm depressed. I'm never going to get over this. That's a choice.
Right, it is a choice. See, depression, again, it's a tool that the body uses to slow you down, to make you handle the things that you need to handle. Unfortunately, sometimes you might not know. And we can go into this a little bit later, but most of this stems, again, from childhood trauma, too, that there might be underlying anxiety and underlying depression that you don't know about until it comes back around again. And that's true. But these things need to be handled. Some people today, because it's so easy now, because you can get on Facebook and everything else, everybody's like, ooh, I have a mental disorder too, this is great. Now you have a whole boatload of friends that go with you, and now your depression is a way to invent a new identity. And let me tell you something else. When you are young and we go through a childhood trauma, most of us have, but depending on the level, there's two ways we can split, right? We have narcissistic wounding. When we get narcissistically wounded, if we become a flat-out, let's say, narcissist, right? The covert narcissist. Well, let me talk about the overt narcissist because it's easy. We see him on TV every day, right? Somebody like Donald Trump, right? He's a narcissist. This isn't political, okay? Because if you're going to tell me he's not because of your political thing, then you're blind and deaf too. But here's the thing. A narcissist wants the attention. They have a fractured sense of self. They don't like themselves inside. So they develop a false self. When they develop this false self, they try to get attention. And it may or may not work. Here's how it can work. If you're Donald Trump and you have millions of dollars and you have a lot of business successes and now you're president, trust me, when you say I'm great, there's thousands upon thousands of people that would be willing to admit that you're great. So it's cool. Like, it works for him. And it definitely is a way that he has gotten over his fractured sense of self. But what if you don't have a lot of money? What if you're not good looking? What if you're not talented? How do you try to tell people you're great? It doesn't work. So you tell people you suck. That's what you do. So you walk around every day going, my parents suck, I'm bad at school, I don't have any job opportunities, I'm horrible, let me do a bunch of drugs. So when somebody says, hey, so how you doing these days? You're like, I have a drug problem, don't expect too much from me. Listen, this is narcissism also, okay? But it's covert narcissism, it's reverse narcissism, it's underneath. It's like they're trying to get attention too, but it's the only way they know how. If you have no tools, if you don't have any like positive qualities that people are attracted to, what you do is you bring people in on a negative fashion. When I look at guys like Chester Bennington, now he had talent, don't get me wrong, but when I hear him talk, all I do is hear a narcissist. It's just over and over and over again. And when I hear him talk, he is spouting words. It's a saccharine smile that he puts on now and then. It's fake. It's kind of like what Heidi says about a lot of life coaches. Just smile your day away, but really underneath is all this stuff. This is what happens when you fake it and you don't actually talk about what's really going on inside you. Chester Bennington he's a good poster boy for that, because in his words, and I'll go over them in a little while, he is spouting the exact words from cognitive behavioral therapy. There's nothing that he's saying that's intelligent or smart, by the way. He's just basically reading the script. So if you don't know that and you're 15 years old hearing that, you think, wow, he's freaking amazing. And I'll tell you, he's just reading page 1 of a CBT book. So that's the truth of it. And the fact that he's reading it basically off the top of his head with no emotion tells me that he doesn't know how to apply any of it. And here's something else about CBT. They talk about your thought, first thought, will create a feeling in you. Makes sense, right? Here's a situation, I have a thought, it creates a feeling. That feeling will affect my behavior. That's how they talk about it. But here's the thing that they don't understand, and supposedly he's been in therapy for like 15 years. I don't know what therapist he's been to, or I don't even know if he's really tried. Because the fact is that a thought is also a symptom. So if you're in a situation and your thought is a negative one, I want to know why you automatically think negative.
Well,
Did you notice that in his speech that he was actually trying to educate people, which is even more sickening. But he never even considered that his thoughts have come from a very dark place. It came because he had a very fractured sense of self. The number one cause for this really is childhood trauma. And when that happens, for some people, not all people, now remember when I say this, because it's really important, and you'll never hear it on the news, you'll never hear it in the media, because it's the hardest thing in the world to ever do. What happens is people disconnect from themselves. If this is you when you're young, and your parents are not emotionally there for you, they yell at you, they scream at you, they're not there to love you, there's no attachment, let's say they let you cry yourself to sleep, let's say they had a babysitter and they touched you inappropriately, let's say, which is what happened to Chester Bennington, by the way. He was sexually abused since he was, I think, 6 years old until he was about 11. What that does to a young child is it takes their ego or their sense of self and it fractures it. That's what that does at that age, because you don't have the mental capacity to say, that person's screwed in the head. They don't do that. They say, I'm screwed up. So what happens is, because you disconnect from yourself, you look at the world and you see this. And you say to yourself, well, any problem that happens in the world, I'm already messed up and torn. There's something wrong with me. So that is the start, and it will lead all the way to suicide if you don't start looking at the problem. The cure, and we'll take a little break as soon as I say this part here. The cure is to not disconnect from yourself. It's to take the time, the courage, the vulnerability, the pain that you'll have to do, because it will be painful, but it's better than killing yourself, is to put this back. So that's your job in your life. The only reason why these people are so have so much illness and so much discomfort and so much dysfunction in their life is because they have disconnected from who they are, and they have this life position of, I'm screwed up, but the world's okay. You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So let's take a little break, and we will be back. Welcome back to the Rise Above Show. I am Joe Perroni.
I'm Heidi Mancini.
All right, we're taking on a very difficult subject today. And listen, I don't mean to offend anybody or to hurt anybody any more than they already are if they're watching this. But listen, there needs to be somebody that tells you the truth about things. And it's okay if you're going through some trouble that you need to talk to somebody, but you have to also talk in terms of eventually a solution-focused way. Stop sitting there and ruminating about the problem, because that rewires your brain for negativity. You know, one of the questions that keeps coming up all the time is someone will always throw this in. They'll go, oh, but isn't it a chemical imbalance? First thing I'll ask you is, you know, tell me, or do you know the name of the test that you can take? What blood test can you take that will tell you that there's a chemical imbalance? The fact is that there isn't any, so we have to throw that off to the side. It's very possible that there is a chemical imbalance from birth, and that could be true, although it's never been proven, and it's almost ever impossible to, even if it did happen, does anybody know anybody that it's happened to? The answer is probably no. Do
drugs and alcohol, though, would that be considered a chemical that you could be chemically imbalancing your body for the fact that you're putting narcotics and toxins or mind-altering antidepressants in your system? Could that be a sense of, because you're distorting your own reality, and so you could be making a symptom or a behavior worse by self-medicating with drugs and alcohol. And everybody that I know that has issues with suicidal ideation, they are drug addicts or alcoholics, or they're doing some kind of self-medicating with drugs.
Right. Listen, it's a great question. Let's take it from the drug standpoint. Every drug you take, what it does is it gives you a dopamine hit, right? It makes you feel good temporarily. Your body adapts to that. It's like plenty of men that I know, right? They overdose on testosterone to be big and strong. That's the quickest way not for your body not to make testosterone anymore. So now you will be testosterone deficient, because the body will try to remain at homeostasis and will pull back the testosterone. If you take drugs to increase your dopamine, when you're not on drugs, your body will stop making dopamine or make a lot less, so you'll be walking around in a stupor most of the time. And you can see this all the time. So if you want to have low dopamine and you want to be depressed, take drugs. It's a good way to do it, because yes, it does screw up your system, and you will have a chemical imbalance that you have induced yourself. That's where one of the problems is. Now, why do people do drugs? So we can talk about that forever. But for our purposes today, let's say you're self-medicating because of depression or anxiety. What happens is, through a lack of connection when you're younger, through trauma, through fear, things will change. Your chemicals will be changed. If you live in a world of depression, if you live in a world of anger, if you live in a world that you tell yourself that you can't do any better, that you tell yourself that you're helpless, that you're hopeless, that the world sucks and the world's against you, guess what? You're going to have a chemical imbalance. That's the way it is. Also, if we were to look at your brain, they would say, oh my God, this person's brain is different. But you weren't born that way. If you live in fear, your amygdala enlarges. Your hippocampus gets smaller. So it's hard for you to retain new material. It's hard for you to bring in new good memories. When the amygdala is keep getting dinged all the time, like there's an alarm system, what happens is that your prefrontal cortex, your reasoning part of your brain, will stop functioning as well as it should. So all of these things cascade down the road to a point where you're sitting there with this learned helplessness or this victim mentality and saying, oh, it's my chemicals. Listen, if you woke up every morning and thought of something good, your chemicals would start to change. If you would start to walk, work out, do something physical, cultivate a meaningful relationship. Don't have a relationship with people who are as sick as you or as bad as you. How's that going to help? You know, you need to get out there. And here's something interesting. You'll hear people say, I'm so depressed, I can't move, I can't do anything. It's this disease. It's not a disease. That's the thing. It's not leukemia, okay? You can stop it when you want to. I didn't say it was easy, but you have to make certain efforts. People with depression will say, I just can't do anything, I can't move. Oh, but you can do the things that make you worse or hurt you. You ever see someone who's depressed looking for drugs? Oh my God, are they motivated? They'll get their drugs. Trust me on this. They're the most motivated people in the world. You tell them to go get a job, all of a sudden, I have depression, I can't do it. Right? So these things, and again, I don't want to be morbid and I don't want to be mean to anybody, but let's check it out. We have a guy, Chester Bennington, he hung himself. Chris Cornell hung himself. Do you know how hard it is to hang yourself? Do you know how much effort it takes to do that? First of all, you have to think of a place to do it. Like if I told you to hang yourself right now, you'd be like, well, I don't know. How am I going to do it? There's no place that I can actually attach anything to. I need a rope. I need to tie a rope. How am I going to do it? You know, you have to figure this out. You're going to go to Lowe's. You know, you're going to have to go through a lot of steps in order to do it. And then you're going to have to come up with the part. And I'm actually going to praise you for this a lot because you had some guts to do it. Heidi got into an argument with somebody about this because she said that a lot of suicide comes down to narcissism. And she held her ground. And the truth is that for the people that don't want to hear it, narcissism correlates very highly with suicide. It's because they are thinking about themselves. Listen, Chester Bennington had 6 kids, I believe, or 7? 7, let's say 6, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, I'm not sure. But Chris Cornell...
He has 3 now and then 3 from a previous...
Okay, so yeah. And Chris Cornell had, 5? So between the both of them, they had 2 wives and 11 children. You couldn't put it together to ask for help? And... talk for a little bit because I need to find this thing here.
Well, my conversation with his client it wasn't when he killed himself, it was somebody else a few months ago. Maybe it was that guy you were just talking about.
Yeah, it was.
And Chester. they go, no, it wasn't Chester, it was his friend. It was whoever. This was a while ago. And she goes, let's ask Heidi because she knows. And I said, they go, what do you think about people that kill themselves? Do you think it's an act of courage or is it an act of selfishness? And I said, you don't want to hear my answer. And she goes, yes, we do, because we value your opinion. I go, he's a narcissist. And they go, why would you say such an awful thing? All those people that feel bad. And I said, that's exactly why I said it, because all the people that they leave behind, their husbands, their wives, their fans, whatever, all these people that love them, nobody's worried about, they don't think about them, because if they did think about them, the first thing I would think about is, okay, I don't want to run my car into the wall because I'm going to leave my daughter behind. I mean, I went through a hard time with my divorce and stuff, and there was times that I was really down in the dumps because money was short and different things. But I thought, you know what? You can't do this. You have a daughter that you need to be healthy for. So at some level, if you're a narcissist, you don't think beyond that. You think about
true.
And the legacy that they want to leave. You'll never forget me because I'm going to kill myself.
God. You know what? They just destroyed countless lives. Every one of those kids immediately has trauma that they will never get over.
Right.
I mean, if they work hard, they can get better, but it will never leave them. They will always have that thought that my father didn't think enough of me to stay alive. That's what it'll happen there. I know I'm talking fast because I have so much information here, and like we're on every 2 weeks.
Well, and the
now,
other fallacy
and
is when they say depression runs in families. Now you're going to have these kids being told, "Oh, you better be careful because your dad killed himself." So now you're going to have a predisposition to depression. So here we go again.
The reason why suicide and depression runs in families is because children are amazing learners. It's not genetic, okay? There's no genetic gene that says, I'm going to hang myself. They're amazing learners. If you teach them to tie their shoes, they will learn how to tie shoes. If you teach them that every morning you need to wake up and have orange juice and just a healthy meal,
Coffee.
they will grow up thinking that. If you grow up and during breakfast every morning you start off the day with a cigarette, they will think about that too. They're amazing learners. It's not in the genetics that do that. So don't even give me that excuse. It's another victim mentality excuse. When you have childhood trauma, there's so many amazingly bad things that happen to you. I've got a long list, but here's a few. You feel like you're burdensome to the people around you. You develop a sense of perfectionism because you're never good enough. You have OCD qualities. You feel like you're an imposter because to live where you did, you couldn't be who you were, or else there would be incredible punishment for you to say what you really wanted to say. It's being like a prisoner of war. Mine wasn't terrible, but it was hard for me because I valued me going to school, and yet nobody around me valued going to school. So I was saving my pennies all the time, and I was always called a miser and cheapskate and selfish. And I always brought that on as like, yeah, that's who I am, but I do want to go to school. So I could never tell people what I really wanted to do, which was I wanted to be somebody. Little things like that. If you feel like you're helpless or hopeless, those are cognitive distortions that you got from birth. If you have a situation that was terrible when you're young, again, it's the disconnecting from yourself that causes the problem. Never disconnect from yourself. I don't care what the situation is. You never have to think badly of yourself. If you were raped, if you were abused, if you were whatever the worst situation is, you're not the bad one. You can look back at that in any way you want. I'm not saying rape is good, but you don't have to say I'm a bad person. I have actually had people in front of me who have been sexually abused. I had one person tell me, well, it was just another 15 seconds out of my life. I know that sounds really callous, but you know what? Isn't that the truth when you think about it? I'm going to say something here because I told Heidi this, and it was like the first time I ever actually told anybody. But it was like a thing that could be a big deal in my life, but it wasn't. I myself was, let's just say I was touched inappropriately when I was very young. I was attacked. I was only like 8 years old. It was in a public place. And my mother was on the outside waiting for me. I didn't want to hurt my mother, so I didn't want to say anything to her. So I held that for like 42 years. I never told anybody. But this is the effect that it's had on my life. You ready? It makes me more empathetic to women who are abused. It makes me more empathetic to people who are overpowered, and when they say no, that they can be overpowered and make them to say yes. That's what it makes me. I have never disconnected from my soul, and I've never thought that I was a bad person because of it. I thought the other person was sick. And if you can do that and understand that you're not the sick one, you can walk through anything. John, how much time we have? 3 minutes. I'm going to read some of the lyrics from this Chester Bennington. And the reason why I'm doing this is to tell you about how he has not moved from point A to point B, and it ended up in suicide, and that's why I don't want to see this happen to anybody. So you need to like check what's going on. You need to check from the beginning, the childhood trauma, see your thoughts about yourself, your cognitive distortions, or your just check your thoughts and beliefs about who you are and connect to yourself again. These words here. There's something inside me that pulls beneath the surface, consuming, confusing. This lack of self-control I fear is never ending. Controlling, I can't seem to find myself again. My walls are closing in. Without a sense of confidence, I'm convinced that there's just too much pressure to take. I felt this way before. I'm so insecure. crawling in my skin. These wounds, they will not heal. Okay, let me just stop there. Everything he's saying here is all about victim mentality and learned helplessness. He's saying he has no control. He's saying that he has no way to stop this from happening to him. Walls are closing in. He has no confidence. There's too much pressure. He can't take it. And he basically says that he doesn't want to have any feelings, which you said in the original speech. Let me tell you something about recovery, about people who take drugs to make their pain go away, supposedly. Recovery, what does it really mean? What it really means is that piece of you that was fractured when you were young, when you were naked, needy, and totally dependent, and you needed attachment and love from a caregiver, and you were not given that. You were given something way worse than that. You were torn to shreds inside. Recovery is to take this piece that was taken from you and to have the courage to put it back. That's recovery. You're recovering your lost self. That's what you have to do. That's what real recovery is. Because you were born perfect, and somehow down the line, because your environment sucked, because we look at the world and you see it as a mirror, and if they don't treat you right, you assume that you're the one who's wrong or defective or dysfunctional, and you start to hate yourself. The day that you start to hate yourself, and again, once you disconnect from yourself, that is the day that you start the slow walk to suicide. And what I mean by that is, you may put yourself in bad places. You may do these risky activities. You're going to start to smoke. You're going to start to drink. You do drugs. You do all this in the name of, I'm just having fun and having a good time, but in fact, you don't really care about yourself. You have sex with people you don't want to have sex with, because you don't care about yourself. You don't love them. How can you? Because you don't love yourself. And these things will repeat and repeat. Then you do drugs, you hurt yourself more, and then you end up in this position where Chester Bennington and Chris Cornell are, that when they're in their 40s, they say things like this: nothing makes me happy, I don't want to feel anything. Although I do know suffering is self-inflicted, I'm the one who's making poor choices. It's what I think about that makes me feel bad. Nobody can make me feel bad but myself. Well, if you know all this,
then get it together.
Then how about we move forward? How about you actually, let's stop glorifying pain and mental illness and death and suicide and get to the crux of the problem. Start doing the hard work. It's easy to take another drink. It's easy to do that. It's hard to look at yourself and your childhood trauma and say, the reason why, I'll tell you, the reason why you say that you're the problem is because as a living thing, it is too difficult to believe that the people who gave us life, our caregivers, thought so little of us and they put us in harm's way. You can't understand that to believe that other people were so shoddy with our life. You can't believe that. So you put it on yourself to say you're the one at fault, but you're not at fault. So it's time to recover your life, because I want these statistics to go down. This is ridiculous, and do not glorify this at all. I think I've said enough. Anything? I think we're done.
We're done.
Thanks for watching. This is the Rise Above Show. I am Joe Perroni.
I'm Heidi Mancini.